For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Tabi Shomolekai. Author Mpho Boshego joins me to unpack her book titled Diplomatic Ties. Welcome, Mpho.
Thank you, Tabi. Nice to be here.
Your book examines what it meant to be young, ambitious, and female in a world that tests loyalty and morality at every turn. So can you tell us about the inspiration behind your book?
So when I wrote the book, actually, it was around 2008, believe it or not. I had just been posted to Brussels. Actually, I was posted in 2007. So when I got the news that I'm going to Brussels, I was really excited to go live in a different country, to go represent my country. But then I realized I've actually never lived outside of South Africa before. So I wanted a book to read a story about someone going on a posting for the very first time. And I realized I knew a lot about geopolitics, international policies, foreign policy, but I never heard a story about someone living abroad, especially a South African. So I went to a bookstore, and all the books that I found were all on diplomacy, geopolitical tensions, wars somewhere, and I could not find like a personal story of someone going out for the very first time or even the second time. So 2 months later, I remember just thinking, I could actually write a book about my own experiences, because I had read a quote from Toni Morrison that said, if there's a story you want to read and you can't find the book, write it yourself. Then I thought, I could write it myself. I mean, I do know how to write, so I could just pen down my own experiences. So that's where the inspiration for the book came from, even though it took a totally different turn, because this is not my story, but I did draw from experiences of being a diplomat in Brussels.
And your book deals with issues of diplomacy in international relations from a South African perspective. So can you tell us, how did your personal experience shape some of the characters involved in the book?
Yeah, so when I went out on my first posting, my only posting actually that I ever did, it was during the time of the African Renaissance. So Africa was at the center of our foreign policy. It was an exciting time to go abroad. I think, what was instilled in us as trainees during diplomatic training was how amazing our country is and what great leadership we have. And, we must go out there really with a lot of pride. So that part is what shaped some of my characters, especially the main character, Mbali, about going on a posting, just realizing how important diplomacy is in changing the perception that people hold about your own country, and how it can also help uplift and develop communities in your country. So her love for diplomacy and understanding what it can do is what really shaped her character and some of her friends that she went on training with.
And what were some of the most significant challenges you faced in bringing politically complex characters to life, especially in a context where diplomacy often masks deeper tensions?
So I know lots of people think this story is about power and politics, but this is a personal story. It's a coming of age story. I wanted to touch more on the emotional touch points of a growing person, even within like a space like diplomacy, where everything is fast paced. You need to know what you're talking about when you go meet with people from other countries who are putting the interests of their countries at the forefront. So you must be sharp, you must be quick. But the story is about a girl who is still trying to find her own voice, and trying to do that in her own personal story, but also in the story of trying to represent her country in a foreign space. So it was not so difficult, because I think for the most part, I did not really want the story to focus so much on the power and the politics, even though, there are central themes as well in the book. But I wanted her personal story to come through, the finding your voice in a fast-paced environment, and to see her go through a journey of self-discovery in an environment that actually does not really allow you time to do that, because you must really almost like come there seasoned. So I think it's a very interesting story of seeing someone navigate that complex environment.
And while we are on that, what is your perspective on ethical consideration in writing, particularly when dealing with sensitive and controversial topics such as self-discovery and integrity?
Yeah, I think when you're writing, for me, it's such a personal journey, because as much as you are putting together these characters, your voice always comes through. And I think I tried to respect the characters by letting them almost like speak their story to me, and seeing them coming to life and using me to tell their stories. So it was almost like playtime as well, because as much as I feel like my voice came out, I feel like their voices came out as well. And I tried to be true to the essence of those voices. As much as I would like to think there was ethical considerations and all of that, maybe not at the beginning. I think at the beginning was, how do you just let the story unfold in the truest form? Not based on, oh, if I write it like this, what would people think? It was more, this sounds very authentic and true to this character, and I'm just going to write it in that manner.
And corruption, institutional malpractice, and gender dynamics in the workplace are central in your novel. So how did you approach portraying these systemic issues in a way that feels both authentic and critical?
I think one of the interesting discussions we always have about this book is because people think that it's real, right? And I think it's because, I think the current climate when it comes to politics in our country is that there's a lot of uncovering of corruption, malpractices, and malpractices in the workplace and all of that. I live in this country, I live in this world, I hear stories, I read about stories, political corruption and all of that is something that is around us. But then for this particular book, The Diplomatic Ties, it was nothing that I had personally experienced, but it is something that has always been around us. So I wanted to put characters in a space like that just to see how they would behave when they are faced with such issues. So it was not particularly like writing from my own experiences. It was more to show those stories in people's personal everyday living, because I think as much as we like to talk about, corruption has become almost like a concept. Malpractice in the workplace, everything is such a concept. But actually, it's all human stories. They're all very personal. The characters in those stories are real people with real emotions and real lives with families. And I wanted to show, I think, that emotional, that personal side of concepts, so to speak.
And lastly, Mpho, what do you hope readers take away after reading your book?
As I said, this is a coming of age story. The character in the book is 24. She's ambitious, she's smart, and on paper she looks like everything is perfect, but beneath the surface there's a lot happening. Someone who doesn't understand herself, someone who's carrying the burden of her family, the burden of what is expected of you in the workplace on her shoulders, and she becomes really stressed. And she's always in survival mode. And I think I wanted to show the journey of what happens when survivalism becomes personality, when you're always so stressed, when you're always trying to reach for the next and bigger, and you can't even sit for a moment to listen to the voice inside of you. You're listening to everyone outside of yourself, and you're looking outside of yourself all the time, and sometimes the behaviors that you display or the choices that you make because of the stresses that you are faced with. And I wanted to show the mistakes that people make when it comes to things like that. But also, at the end of it, I wanted to show that we are bigger than the choices that we have made in the past. You know, that the choices that we make, they do not define us. We can always reinvent. We can always make different choices, choose ourselves, you know, be one with ourselves, and be able to shut out the noises from the outside and put yourself first. And I think that's what I would like people to take away from this, that, you know, your past does not define you. You can always make a new choice, a different choice, and it's okay. And everything that you have had done, like the character Mbali in the book, you know, at the end, when she does find her voice and she can feel herself in a bigger environment, and she can stand with that, I believe that we all have that, and I believe that the story of Mbali can resonate with all of us, and we can find pieces of ourselves in her.
Thanks a lot, Mpho.
Thank you so much, Tammy.
That was Mpho Boshego discussing her book, Diplomatic Ties. Visit the Polity website to access more author interviews, news, and information updates. If you haven't already, subscribe to Polity's email services, including our new monthly Polity Bookshelf email, to stay informed about the latest news and Polity Bookshelf developments.